All right, everyone. I apologize for that. Me and Aaron were actually talking backstage without you all. So the whole point of this is to, so that you all can watch and participate as well. Let me make sure I see some commenters there, so you guys are seeing this. Let me see. My computer is behaving well today. There's always something new to learn about it. All right, so there is me. Everybody, please smash that like button. Okay, there's me. Let me fix my speaker here because this microphone always switches it over to the Yeti settings. All right, everybody, tonight, Captain Capitalism is back, and we're going to discuss his, what I believe is his latest book, A World Without Men, an analysis of an all-female economy. And I think it really gives insight into our modern society and things that we're seeing unfold around us. There's insight in this book that some of the other experts don't want to say. And Aaron unpacks quite a few things in this book. So we're going to talk about this. I'm going to play the intro, and then I'm going to bring Aaron up on the other side to respect both of our schedules. I don't get to take these nice days off in the Yosemite National Park or wherever that is he is. I have to go in the office tomorrow, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I'll see you on the other side of this special intro for A World Without Men. Okay, let me enable my ticker here. I don't know if anyone recognizes that music. YouTube might not like me playing that snippet, but it's something I've been listening to a lot recently. And for those of you who don't know, I've taught myself how to play keyboard a little bit. That was Stout Hearted Men. It's a really, really cool older song, usually sung by male choirs. And I thought it would pair really well with this. Okay, so thank you everyone for being here. Please smash that like button. The super chat is live, all of those things. So everybody, yes, I have tonight, Captain Capitalism, Aaron Carey agreed to come back to talk about his latest book, A World Without Men, an analysis of an all-female economy. So it's a take on our current circumstances in the United States. But Aaron's background is economics, one of my favorite topics. I'm sure he's laughing at that. And so he gives a spin on it that many others have not. And he's connected some dots that many others probably don't want to connect. So with that, everyone, let's welcome back Captain Capitalism, Aaron Carey.
Pharmacology isn't your favorite subject? It's economics now?
No.
Oh,
economics.
okay. All right.
Well, there's math involved in both. So, yeah. But yours breaks down human behavior and spending patterns and economies and all kinds of things. So yours is a little more exciting.
Well, this week anyway. The next book ain't going to be as exciting, but yeah, this one's I will admit this one was a little more saucy. And the numbers kind of bore it out. So it was kind of fun writing the research in this one.
Okay. Well, you don't like to see the questions ahead of time, Aaron. I admire people who go on platforms and they're willing to fly blind, but I needed a little roadmap here. So before we get into A World Without Men, just briefly, in as much detail as you want to break down, what are your thoughts on 2025 thus far, the new administration, government efficiency? Do you think that this is all smoke and mirrors, and at the end of the day, will still be trillions of dollars in the whole? What do you see in your crystal ball?
Oh yeah, no, we'll still be trillions of dollars in the hole. I haven't looked at the latest Republican budget that was, I guess, passed. I don't pay attention to politics anymore simply because I don't control them. But I do. I guess it's a step in the right direction with Trump with most of his executive orders. I do like the Department of Government Efficiency. I like that we have one, and at least for this administration, because the system, including the government and everyone's welfare payments, if you're dependent upon the government, you need a financially solvent government in order for its checks to mean anything, or in order to get them. So just being an economist, yes, having good finances for any organization, whether it's an individual company or the government, that's important. And so we're finding a tremendous amount of waste, which is no surprise. So that's all good. But I'm not selling my Bitcoin anytime soon. I'm not converting my silver into dollars. I am not like, oh, we're in the clear now. I will wait until we have a balanced budget amendment, a very clear financial roadmap to financial solvency for the federal government, reform of all the different government programs that are needed to bring a balanced budget and pay down debts a little bit. And above all else, we're going to need the help of the other party, the Democrats, to say, yeah, you're right. We need to, I don't care how ideologically opposed to us, to each other we are, but math is math, and this is not going to last forever. So we'll see, but I'm not long-term optimistic unless some very serious reform and change. No government has, on par with Argentina, I would say. So we'll see what happens in a year, and then maybe I'll have a little more confidence. But right now, I'm not changing any investment strategy I had before.
Okay. Well, so everybody, so I do have enjoy the decline here. Aaron did come and talk about this one, and I do have the Black Man's Guide out of Poverty. It must be in a box somewhere. I know I had it during the pandemic, and it must have got up and walked away. Sorry?
It escaped?
It escaped.
Yes, it escaped. Yeah.
Are you still sticking close to your predictions and forecasts in this?
Yeah, long term. Yeah, no, that's held up pretty good for what, 12 years, 10 years, however old it is now. But yeah, generally it's I don't really pay attention much to the government anymore, or just pay attention to the people. I don't see the American people switching and working more hours. I don't see them losing weight. I don't see them, oh yeah, man, that was crazy for us to major in English in an English speaking country. I don't see that happening. So until I see the American people get serious as well, because the government's merely a reflection of the people. So most of my predictions and enjoy the decline would still hold true to today.
Okay. All right. Well, let's dive into A World Without Men, a book you warned me about. I don't have a girlfriend right now, so I don't have to worry about it.
You're not, after this show, you're not going to have a girlfriend for a while, but let's go anyway.
All right. So I'm going to start with the Peter Robinson approach. Peter Robinson is the host at the Hoover Institution. He usually talks to Thomas Sowell, and he reads Thomas Sowell's passages, and then they sit and they talk for hours and hours. We won't do that, but I'm going to start with this passage from the back. So we're going to do the Stephen Covey thing, start with the end in mind, and then we're going to work our way from the beginning. Okay, so this paragraph reads, and everybody, I encourage you to get your own copy of this. Okay, this reads, tragically, no matter what feminists tell you, Disney says, or the Democrat Party claims, the most important thing in men's and women's lives are each other and any children you might be lucky enough to have. And this says nothing of the tremendous value you will find in other people through other relationships, be it social, fraternal, professional, or otherwise. But in gutting the spiritual core of society out from itself by removing women from men's lives, you have ensured we as a society will decay, as there is no motive to improve our individual selves, to beget investment and love from one another. And so today and into the foreseeable future, you can expect your fellow man and certainly your fellow woman to be so worthless, so pointless, even adversarial and costly, your life is most certainly better off without them. Okay, that's from the final chapter, everyone. Okay, powerful words. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. So, yeah, Aaron, all I can say is wow. Um, um, but were you serious? I mean, with this, do you think this book is that triggering in terms of its content, or were you just horsing around with me?
No. I'm 100% serious about the words I said. I don't think that may shock people a little bit, but I'm not being facetious or tongue in cheek. The paradox that we face here is one, as always, the most important thing in our lives have been other humans, particularly our loved ones, family, children, and all that. Well, we find ourselves in a world today, I would say, especially in America. I'm not anti-American. I'm just a misanthrope. You look at the quality and caliber of people today, they're very selfish. They're very self-centered. They're solipsistic. They are unaware that other people exist. They think that they're the only ones here. Like they're not sympathetic towards other people. Like that's a human being with their own tastes and preferences and their obligations. They have to work for a living. I see people just pretty much living in their own bubble. And you cannot have a relationship with another person if that person won't even acknowledge you as a fellow human being, let alone your personal desires and interests, especially in a romantic relationship. And so it's really tragic and sad because I don't care. Our GDP is 89,000 per year. I was shocked how high it was. Okay, we're a very wealthy nation. We're actually quite poor because, well, what are you going to do? Who are you going to hang out with? Most people are not getting married, and if they are married, they're miserable. People are having fewer and fewer children. People aren't raising their children. Most people are getting divorced with their children. They alienate the family. You have broken homes. The family unit is breaking down, and even friendships are starting to suffer. So every human being, whether they like to admit it or not, is programmed to find the greatest joy in love, or I would say reciprocal investment from other people. But they're just too darn lazy to improve themselves that anyone would want to invest them in the first place. And so in the context of this, it's economics. Are you contributing to society, or women contributing to society? But I would also say, especially pertains to men and women in a romantic capacity. Are you sitting down, shutting up about what you want and thinking what the other person wants? Because that's true love. And I see that so rarely in relationships now that it really is transactional. And once that is gone, you've basically gutted the engine of economic growth, because men, largely the only reason they get out of bed in the morning is to get laid, find a woman they love, and if they have kids, to support their kids. That's it. And that's largely gone, or a very risky endeavor to pursue from a legal and financial standpoint today. And also, as much as men may not want to admit it, we desire the love and care and attention. And this is going to be very controversial. That's again, Anwar, did you know that men want sex sometimes too? I didn't mean to. I don't let that one out. I don't want you getting in trouble. But that's what men crave. And now that we're more in an adversarial or a zero-sum game, where what can I get out of this person? What can that person get out of me? And I'm not even thinking of that person, someone that, man, maybe they're better and greater than myself. We've lost pretty much everything that's important in this society and culture and country. And also by a consequence, tremendous loss, economic growth and potential.
Okay. Yeah, I have an observation / question here that basically says, what does it say about where we are right now, that thinking about what's best for children and our species? What does it say that those thinking about those things are bad, as opposed to individual wants and looking at the opposite gender with malice and contempt, and we've come a long way from where things used to be.
Yes, I think some of it was propaganda, how people were raised. And I will not shy away from making the claim that feminism has, and malice is almost too strong of a word. I would say rendering men and women adversarial. I think that's the best way to put it. I don't think feminism has turned a lot of women into hating men, though that's true in a population of 320 million people. But men are certainly no longer the number one goal of women. And a lot of women are, I would say, conditioned to be indifferent towards or annoyed by men and men's pursuit of women, especially when it comes to sex. However, I'm also pretty sure that for most of human evolutionary history, women were not all that interested in men either to begin with. So a lot of people say, well, feminism is this hatred movement. It's done nothing but drive division between men and women, and I could see some arguments for that. But I look at the two major events. One, you have the Industrial Revolution, which allowed for white collar work, which means women were no longer dependent upon men, and then also the welfare state, where even if you weren't able to make enough money, you are more or less taken care of. You're not going to starve in this country. And so, whereas in times past, women needed men to survive, men were the ones providing and protecting and all that other stuff. Women literally don't need men now. And I think when given the choice, which now women have for the first time, you can even see it in books and words and writing of feminists, and maybe not even feminists, but we're independent of men. We don't need men anymore. And I think there actually is some authenticity to that statement. I don't think women are just saying that to puff their chest or maybe retro beautifully get back at a man in their past. I don't think the majority of women really want to be with the majority of men. I think they did it out of necessity or obligation, or certainly part of it was that cause. Because then when you look at the divorce rates that happened once it was no fault divorce, that spiked up. You look at women's polling in terms of life priorities. Men are about 4th to 7th place, depending on the age of the woman. And then it's a very macabre. It's a depressing observation. Let me ask, just let's play National Geographic, right? We're going to go look at the wildebeests in the Serengeti or whatever. Anwar, you have a doctorate in pharmacology, right? You got some hobbies. You list them right there, right? I mean, you're not. When's the last time a girl asked you out?
Oh, yeah, that's
Has a woman ever asked you out?
I mean, at times they would, if someone is interested, if they're interested, they would, do you want to do something?
Flirt
I'll pay for it this time,
right.
but those are few and far
right
in between.
And that's what I'm saying is, I don't think I would say for pretty confidently, I know for a fact women are only fractionally interested in men as men are women. And I think that's biological design to prevent overpopulation that you see in all animal kingdoms. Humans are not unique. But we have, as men especially, we have to step back and realize this isn't necessarily a bluff. This isn't inauthentic. If women really like men on par, like, oh yeah, we like men, well then they would be asking men out, or they'd be flirting a little bit more, or whatever, and they don't. And so what I think is that the human species has evolved so quickly and tamed and mastered technology and ushered in such economic growth, especially with the Industrial Revolution. Women now are liberated from men, and you're witnessing what is probably closer to women's true interest in men, which is a fraction of what we thought it was. And so and it's sad and tragic, because I do believe women for the right guy would get married, and they do want that. On polling, they do want it. But if you look at the polling, they want some other things more, especially modernly: career, education, finances, travel, adventure, all that other stuff. But what my research is showing me is, if you take an impassionate view and look at it empirically, women are just not that interested in men. And so this now brings up a bunch of questions like, okay, well then what's life about? Right? Because I don't know. we're at the frontier now. For men, it was children, sex, wife, and maybe career. I mean, yeah, we'd like to be rich, but that's primarily what motivated men. I don't know what motivates women in a kind of post-materialist or post-male world where you don't need a man anymore. But you're starting to witness this where women actually don't need men. I don't think necessarily it's a bluff. I think feminism probably accelerated it or made it a little bit more radicalized than it would be. But this is a paradox that we're facing right now in terms of, do women even want men in their lives? And so now we're looking at, okay, well, that's what motivated men for their economic growth and motivated them to work. And now you're starting to see the labor force participation rate of men collapse, and they're not going to college and all these other metrics. But that is what I'm concerned as an economist. What is the future of the economy going to look like if we don't have each other in each other's lives, and therefore the motivation to go out and produce things?
Okay. Yeah, you said a lot there. I was thinking that in years past, there were, and I got in trouble for saying this, guardrails on society. Maybe we could switch that out for customs, family traditions, where, I mean, this is pre no fault divorce, where it was expected that a boy and a girl would one day get married.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Many of those guardrails / customs / rituals have been stripped. And so what I'm saying is, I've pondered, were couples actually happy? Were the women happy years ago? And that's a buzzword that you hear the opposite gender voice quite a bit. Happy, happy, happy. I want to be happy. I wasn't happy. You're not making me happy. So I think with some of those social aspects, community aspects, family aspects, maybe religious aspects that have been stripped away, now it's about being personally happy. You know, and maybe couples years ago, maybe they were miserable together for 30 and 40 years, but they stayed together because it was what people did back then.
Right. It was required for society to continue on. and there, yeah, and you're right. There are rules. Like, one could argue they might be outdated with the advent of birth control, but to make sure the kids didn't become criminals and wards upon society, you had to stick together. And that's why divorce was so frowned upon, and single parenthood was so frowned upon. And yeah, those are gone. I mean, but we can afford them to be gone. I don't know about psychologically, mentally, and long-term in the future, but financially, like, okay, yeah, you got WIC and all these other programs. But yes, and unfortunately, we do not have happiness surveys that go back 100 years. We really don't know. And this puts women, and I can only speculate what it is like. If we were to believe the baby boomer women and the feminists back in the day, that they weren't happy, that they need divorce. And even me being a libertarian, I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't be forced to be stuck with someone you don't like, especially if there's abuse or anything else like that. But if I had to guess, back in the day, despite it being rules and rigid, I think over time, women probably were happier back then because of the structure and the cultural stability and the long-term investment you get from your husband and your kids. It may not be ideal. They may not have wanted it at first. And again, I am speculating, but I think they were at least happier, more content back then. And the only reason I say that is today I look at young single women, or not even young, especially old single women. None of them are happy. It's kind of, we're going into uncharted territory where there's this new thing called you don't need a man. And women, understandably, being married to men, and we're kind of gross and we fart a lot, and some of us weren't the best. Say, guy, I don't like this guy. This is a pain in the ass. I don't like him. I don't want to do. I should be able to leave if I want to. But it's the first time now we've like, well, we're going to be apart. You don't have to have a man. We don't have to be together. And it's the first experimental generation of lab rats that we're doing this with. And right now, while on paper, it may have seemed, yeah, guys are kind of they're not perfect. And yeah, some are bad. And yeah, he expects you to take care of the house and all the dishes and the chores, and you slave away taking care of the children. That does kind of sound bad, but it's kind of the same. It's kind of like, it's very akin, now that I think about it, it's very akin to the only thing worse than having a job is not having a job, because at least the job gave you something to do. It gave you some kind of purpose and agency. And I think going into this uncharted territory where we thought, like, logically things would be better, I don't believe women are actually happier. They might report it. I see a lot of what is it called, PBRF. I see a lot of grumpy, sad women. Their finances are not together. I know that. Antidepressant use and other drug-related user metrics, if you want to use those go up with women as they age. It's increasingly apparent to me that women thought they knew what they wanted. They kind of got it, and it's the first time anyone's got it. And now it's not that they have buyer's remorse. It's not, the human mind is not programmed to adapt to this new living situation. And so I think women are lonely. They're depressed. Their finances are garbage. That's a different discussion. And I think going forward, there might be some buyer's remorse. But whether this continues on or not, in the here and now, there are some immediate economic ramifications. So it's kind of this balance even I have a struggle with, because I don't want women to be forced into marriage. I don't want a woman to go out with me because she has to. I want a loving woman who's like happy to see me. You come through the door, she's like giving you a hug and a kiss. I want kids. Well, I don't want kids. I never wanted kids, but I can see where you want your kids to love you and not be estranged and split custody. I can see that, what we had traditionally, but I think if you remove those factors, which humans have grown up the entire time, I think sadness, depression, malaise, and misery are likely to ensue. So we'll find out, I guess, if this is an experiment or if it's more of a permanent thing. But women are definitely in this paradox where I really don't need a man. I really don't want a man. Yeah, but then why do you got this big gaping hole in your soul right now? So we are definitely in interesting and curious times, the answer of which I don't have yet right now.
Well, the other thing is, who was the unhappy party? Was it the boomer generation women, or was it the silent generation and the greatest generation of women before them who said, look, this sucks. I'm at the mercy of this man. I'm having 10 kids and I'm stuck here. I can't leave. I can't get a checking account. I can't get a mortgage. So I've spent some time thinking about that. Was it the boomer generation, or was it the generations before them who felt like they were giving up too much to be housewives?
But
okay.
Here's the question about that. Would they have known, right? The idea of you don't have to be a wife, like, that was just tradition. That's just what you did. So I'd imagine maybe silent, but definitely boomers, because they sure did pull that divorce cord. They definitely exercised their option on divorce. So, I mean, it's moot and academic now, but if we were to peg a generation, I'm going to call it the boomers were the ones that were like, yeah, let's give this a shot and see what happens.
Okay. I think you already mentioned it, but just briefly, what inspired you to write A World Without Men?
Because I was afraid they were going to take down the data, of all things. I knew of this data series for quite some time before I wrote the book, and it's one of those procrastinating things. And so I'm like, dude, they're going to take this data down, at least under the Biden administration. So I went there. It was there. I downloaded the Excel spreadsheet, and it may still be there for all I know, but I had the data. And the secondary reason was it had to be pointed out. Personally, I'm sick and tired of being told I'm not needed. I think women are absolutely wrong, and they absolutely have no clue. It's not that they undervalue. They have no clue how vital men are to society. And then in the larger political, sociological discussion where men bad, women good, men aggressive, women bad, I wanted to write this book. Like, no, let me show you kind of an economic account of what men do. And if you don't need us, here's what would happen and here's what would look like. So it was actually quite an easy economic analysis because the data was conveniently compiled by the Department of Labor. It was then just going through and displaying that and kind of making a short essay about it.
Okay. So when you say they are not going to leave it up, that suggests that there's a faction out there that doesn't want this data
right
to be highly considered by the general public, and maybe they want things to keep going down the road they're going and just fracturing and splintering.
Right. There's a political motive to keep, like, right now, I don't know who landed the Delta airplane upside down. Was it the guy pilot or the girl pilot? I still don't know who that was. There are obvious on both sides to keep a PR and an image. Like right now, Snow White and the remake of Snow White is out. Dude, every PR piece out there, it's a good movie. It's a great movie. There's no pre-sales. There's no nuts. So I understand different entities and institutions have a political agenda. But this one, yes, I believe there was going to be an incentive to take it down if it hasn't been taken down already. And so I did want to kind of like chronicle that and record it. So at least we did have it at one time.
Okay. Well, I just, with this particular thing, to let this train keep going, it's just creating so much chaos. And I get an annual talking to from my mother about, you need to be with somebody, humans aren't meant to be alone. And some people don't know what's going on. Some people don't know because Rachel Maddow, Joanne Reed, they're not talking about it. They didn't talk about it. They didn't talk about this at the Democratic National Convention. So some people are none the wiser that any of this is going on. So, that's why it's even more important that you created this work.
Right.
Okay. So, just like with Enjoy the Decline, you started off with a chapter giving the overall context. So let's talk about I Don't Need No Man. So for me personally, my first encounter with those dreadful words was probably 1994, 95. We were young. I was probably 18, 19, 20, and I was seeing somebody, and we got into a squabble about things 18 and 19-year-olds get into. But she okay, you're still there.
No, I'm here. I'm just having go on.
But the person I was seeing at that time, she let those words out, and I don't need a man. And the first time it's like, well, what do you say to that? Like
you were like 20 years old?
Yeah, I was like 20 years old.
Yeah.
She said, I don't need a man. I don't need a man. It's like, well, that those words never came up to that point at home. I never heard my mother say that. But that's the first time I encountered that. I think the girlfriend before her, and again, we're late teens. She was letting out hints of a feminist lean. Okay, the man can take my last name. Why do I have to take his last name? Why do I have to cook? He can cook. All these different things. So that's, for me, that was in the early 90s. Were you starting to hear these things at an early age in Minnesota? Because in K through 12 in Buffalo, we didn't really hear that in the school system.
I heard it in grade school, like first, second grade. And I'm trying to remember which teacher, but my memory's a little fuzzy. But I've heard that basically my entire life. Then I heard it definitely among peers, girls in middle school and high school, and definitely college. And it just became a trope, like it was just given. I'm sure in the many girls I dated, one girl would say I didn't need a man or something. But at that time, you just wrote it off because it was background noise. Like, yeah, okay, yeah, we got it. You don't need a man. So for me, it was pretty ubiquitous and universal. Not that every woman I met into, I go up to McDonald's, she's like, I tell you, I don't need a man. Like, no one ever did that. But it was just an assumption. So when they said it, it was not quite as shocking to me. I think where I started getting sick of it was with this modern day girl boss. Like inevitably you want to say, hey, ladies, shut up. We know already. Yeah, we got it. You've been saying it for 40 years. We got it. You don't have to remind us. But yeah, that's been a background assumption in my life, in my interactions with women.
Okay. And I don't think I don't think either of us are saying all women felt that way or all women feel that way, because certainly there are women who do enjoy the company of men and do see the need for us. But that was certainly an appropriate way to start this. And just as the years went on, you started to see more of that start to permeate your communities. You started to see that in pop culture. You started to see that in media. And so someone decided that that was a good thing to propagate and multiply in our society. So that was chapter 1. Okay, so that set the table. Chapter 2 becomes a tour de force of our favorite topic, economics. And what's brilliant about chapter 2 is you go ahead and you break down. You reintroduce to us what GDP, real GDP per capita are. And I think the reason you did that is because it kind of breaks out who contributes what and who produces what, who contributes what. So you really itemize that here in chapter 2. And you show by gender how much men and women contribute to the GDP. And you also do a masterful job of breaking down the different jobs and the different roles that make up the economy. And you show how much men participate in those jobs and how much women participate in those jobs. And I never thought about this, but there are some functions that if these things don't get done, this whole deck of cards would fall down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the big 2 areas that men contribute to more than women are farming, okay, and making stuff, building stuff, creating stuff. Okay. So yeah, so it's for those who espouse that rhetoric and those sentiments, this whole society would collapse if there weren't men doing those jobs, those dirty
absolutely.
jobs. Shout out to Mike Rowe, that there were men. It's just the farming. I mean, we go to the grocery store, we assume there's going to be food there. We go out to these nice foodie restaurants here in DC. Being a foodie is a big deal. But if there was no one out there working the fields and farming, planning the planting seasons, all those different things, this whole thing would fall down.
Yeah. And what I found out, my thesis was correct, but generally, if you look at nominal GDP, like you take in all dollars spent, no matter what, in terms of importance to the economy or not, men produce 60% of the GDP, women produce 40%. And I got my book here. I had to consult the notes because there's a lot of numbers and statistics. But when you break down by what type, right? So let's say a woman designs a handbag and she sells that handbag for $200,000. Now, you and I might say that's ridiculous, but that goes into GDP. That's $200,000 of production. But I'll tell you right now, $200,000 worth of sewage construction is way more important than that one handbag. And so what I did is I broke things down between critical GDP, important GDP, not so important, and then even completely wasteful GDP. And when you look at that, especially the critical parts of the economy, a bifurcated market kind of occurs. There is a infrastructural economy that exists. And if it didn't exist, the second part of the economy that runs on top of it would also fail to exist. And so things like construction, transportation, medicine, farming, carpentry, oil, these are all 90% plus men. A lot of them are 95, 96. Mechanics, I believe it's something like 96% of mechanics are men. Then you look at women's GDP, and it was education, nonprofits, general business, and I'm trying to, because I can't find the chart in there. And the other one was healthcare, because a lot of women do go into into nursing. But when you look, you already look at it right off the bat. Men are working more than women, and we're working longer than women. We make 60% of the economy. So already we're contributing more to the economy. You back out the fluffy stuff and you focus on the important stuff, it's almost 100% men. And without that, there is no economy. So that was kind of the thing where I get mighty sick and tired about hearing about the wage gap and how women are oppressing this country. Like, I don't see a single one of you working on an oil rig. I don't see a single one of you working whatever late night taxi cab driver or something. I don't see a single one of you, whatever, the garbage men and all that. It's not to say that there aren't female cops or female garbage drivers, but there sure are a lot of kindergarten teachers. There sure are a lot of nonprofit workers. There sure are a lot of HR Karens. And that right there is what kind of, I draw the line where it's like, no, you should really be thankful for men for what they do. And you really should be quiet about this. Oh, we're the wage gap, which is not a wage gap. It's an effort and hours worked per week gap. That's what it is. And then to accuse men of oppressing you. No, that stuff needs to stop. And so you can see that very clearly in those statistics that you just highlighted there, that men are definitely carrying their weight and then some in this economy.
Okay. Yeah. As you were saying that, I mean, you brought up the wage gap, but that's another prickly pear there. And I think that the people usually presenting that are not honest.
No, they're not. No.
About the nuances of that whole thing.
Right. If you really wanted to help women, if we go way back to one of the first books I wrote, is called Worthless. It's talking about preventing people from majoring in stupid degrees. And a lot of people say, oh, well, but what about women? They're majoring in all this stuff. Why do you hate women? It's like, I don't hate women. Don't you get it? I'm trying to prevent them from spending $100,000 in 4 years of their youth on a college degree that just isn't going to pay. When you talk critically about something like the wage gap, what we're trying to do is actually close the wage gap with things that work, not merely whine and complain about it. And so I have no respect for people that disagree with me on the wage gap, because it's the same thing every time. I'll pull up the same charts. Here's what women major in. Here's how many hours of work they work per week. And everyone disregards it and goes right back to, oh, it's discrimination and all that. It's like, well, then we're never going to close this wage gap because you're lying to women about the causes about why they make less. If you're truthful to them, it's the exact same thing about talking to somebody about losing weight. Everyone wants to spare their feelings. That is not helping that person. You need to tell them, look, you're going to lose a foot with diabetes if you don't lose weight. And you lose weight by exercising and dieting. The person that tells you that, it's like your buddy who tells you got bad breath. They actually care about you. And so, and it's not even that. I understand the political motivations of people. What I cannot abide is women make less than men, and it must be because men are oppressing us. I'm like, no, I'm done being called an oppressor. I do not discriminate against women. I don't oppress women. And I think a lot of people are sick of that argument now too, because that's all we've heard for 40 years. So and the book is like, look, are we going to have a real discussion about these things or not? Because we can have all the other books in the world, like written by, what's her name? Sheryl Sandberg, and all the touchy feel good books. It's surprising how all of Oprah's books hasn't closed that wage gap yet. But having real conversations, analyzing the economy, that actually will make progress, especially economic progress for women.
Okay. Everybody, please smash that like button. I have questions for Aaron. If you have comments or questions as well, you're free to ask them in the chat. Super chats are welcome. I would encourage everybody to get a copy of this. It's a quick read. This is not as long as Enjoy the Decline. But this is an important read, especially now in these current times. So chapter 4, the thing I was thinking about with chapter 4, which is I believe it's called An All-Female Economy.
Well, let me take a look at chapter 4. The future is now.
Okay, no, it's chapter
3.
Yeah, chapter 3.
What an economy would look like without men.
Yeah, so we know obviously that our species would wither away and die because there's no sperm around to.
Well, that too, yeah.
But assuming there was this utopia where there was just women. I mean, in theory, would they learn how to by themselves? I mean, and this is not to say that women don't work on farms now, but would they, in theory, be able to do
Test
the
tube babies or
build
whatever.
build the buildings and work the farms and lay the concrete?
It depends. See, because right now men exist, right? And we're awfully kind to women. And actually, we're not kind. We're opportunists. We'll do kind things for women because we want something for them. I won't say what it is, but men are here and we work very hard to get something that we want. So women never really had to, right? Change their oil or farm or whatever else. Generally, men did that for them. We won't know. We'll never find out because there will always be men. But the question would be, well, okay, if men were gone, poof, tomorrow, would women just sit there continuing doing their own current jobs and professions? Well, probably not, because they would have to, otherwise they'd die out. So I would imagine at least some women would go and take on the roles that men did because they had to, kind of akin to World War II with Rosie the Riveter and women working in the factories and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of historical precedent that women would stop being nonprofit workers and HR directors and all that, and maybe some would become farmers. But if they continue on as they are now, there'd be no food, there'd be no electricity. And using some different metrics and measures, it'd be akin to having the standards of living of Kenya, which is about $5,000 in GDP per capita. This assumes you had a critical mass of women who could be electrical engineers, electric linemen, civil engineers who could keep the sewer systems going, your key economic infrastructure stuff going on. I think, frankly, if it was now, everyone would be dead in about a month. But I do believe that some women would, if you had an all-female economy, women would not statically remain in the current positions they are now because their lives would be threatened. Like my girlfriend did a tune-up on the car one time because I showed her how to do it. They're capable of it. It's just, well, this guy will, if I bat my baby blues and say, oh, can you come over and help fix my computer? There's 6 guys out the door that will do it for her. So I think when your life is threatened, you're hungry. Yeah, you'll probably learn. So I think women would have capacity to keep themselves alive, but frankly, nowhere near what men do right now. Absolutely not even close.
Okay. Now, we discussed this before going live. In my mind, chapter 4, it kind of goes with those in my audience. If you look back at my library, I did some content on this book, Men Without Work by Nicholas Eberstadt. And it talks about the fact that there's been an increasing number of prime age working men falling out of the labor market, collecting social benefits and playing video games and being on screens. That's what Mr. Eberstadt attributes to that. But in this chapter, Aaron, and I believe in the next chapter, you say, hold on, wait a minute. No, it's what it is men's motivation is women and beauty and having families and having that companionship. And without that, what we're seeing is that many of these prime age working men, many of them younger, they're content to get by on $22,000 per year, which help me here. That's a fraction of the GDP. Did I get that right?
Yeah, right now we produce a GDP per capita of 89,000 per person per year. Per person per year. Sorry, per person per year.
Yes.
That normally correlates with income per capita, but the higher income people skew it. So a median income per capita or GDP per capita is more like 46 to 50. I'd have to refresh my memory. But the point of that statistic is, and you can kind of see it, increasing number of men are living at home. Men, that you have the NEETs not in education, employment, or training. You have the labor force participation rate going down. You have an increasing number of young men claiming to have a mental disability and collecting SSI checks. And just the fact, if you do the math for a single person, you only need about $22,000 a year to live. Certainly not in San Francisco, but on average. And if women are removed from men's lives, the only thing they have left to do is stay alive, right? That's all they have to do and be recreational. They don't have to work for children. They don't have mouths to feed. They don't have a wife to take care of. And so it is infinitely easier for a man to just take care of himself than it is for a family. And you start to see that in various measures of men's work ethic, or how much work they're willing to put forward. So hours worked per week has been going down, but that's always been going down because of technology, and work frankly sucks. You see the number of hours worked the years worked in a man's life is also going down. The retiring earlier. Men's spending is, especially within the minimalist community, is going down, and men going into the labor force as well as education or training is going down. And it's a simple cost benefit analysis. They looked at it and said, well, why am I going to do this if, I'm told I'm not needed? And, a guy asks out 5 or 6 girls, and gets shot down all the time. He's going to be less likely to ask out a 7th or 8th. And then you have women just, you cannot forget about the PR, the PR image women in America as a group have put forward, especially on the internet, which I know is skewed negatively and for drama, but that's what men see. I don't see women June Cleavering it up, making us cookies and wearing dresses. I go to Walmart. I don't see pretty girls dolled up, like looking for guys to ask them out. The message that women are sending men corroborates with what they verbally told them, at least from a visual perspective. They're really not that interested in men. So it only is going to take a guy like you and I back in our day in the 90s. Oh, we'd ask out hundreds of gals and we got shot down. We did. Guys now are just like, nah, I'm not going to do it, especially if they've seen their dad and their grandfather get divorced. So these guys are whittling down their economic production by about a half, depending on which measure you want to use. They're measuring, whittling down their production by half, sometimes even all the way down to a quarter. Sometimes, if you collect welfare or some kind of government aid, you become net parasites. You don't even work at all. And so the men are definitely retreating from work, and they're just going on impulse power. They're only doing what is necessary to survive because they don't need it. I mean, how many men, the stats may even be in this book, the number of men who aren't getting driver's licenses, because why do you need one? So it's definitely, men are backing away from the economy, and kind of in a self-fulfilling prophecy, women complain that there aren't any good men. You're right. There's a dwindling percentage of men that you want right now, but they're only reacting to the original incentives that, could have swore somewhere along the lines they were told they weren't needed. Oh, well, cost of education is ridiculous. It's very hard to get a job. And let's not forget, like affirmative action, where women are given preferential treatment to hiring for men. The guys are throwing in the towel, and there will be consequences to that economically. But in an ironic sense, well, now here are the men that you get to date. So I can be sympathetic with women where they're like, but I don't want a guy who lives at home. I'm like, well, who's living on welfare. Well, you should have provided him a little bit more incentive, but they haven't. So it's a tragedy of the commons. It's a tragedy either way.
Yeah, this meme that you put in this chapter with the men think it's okay to live like this with the bed.
Yeah,
and, that was powerful too. I mean, because I think most of us by nature are not consumerist, and well, you see this when you get into relationships. She typically wants to spend more, and until when you're living by yourself, you have your place the way you have it, but she comes over and she wants to spruce it up and get this and get this and get this and get this. That's what I thought about when I saw that.
Yeah, no, it's the amount of, you can even see it in college. Men wouldn't go to college. We wouldn't get master's degrees if there weren't women involved. Well, men aren't going to college. They aren't getting master's degrees because they perceive there's not going to be women involved. And yeah, if you take away women, we'll live in caves. We don't need the fancy car to impress people. We don't need to go get the advanced degrees. We don't need to get, and I have a lot of clients who have places just like that, but they went and majored in something logical like computer science or accounting. And now they're sitting on a ton of money. Why? Because they don't have a wife and they don't have kids. But you wouldn't know that because, yeah, you're right. Guys don't. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't mind having a sports car, I guess, but it's not critical to me. But yes, the in a tragic sense, women got the men they asked for, and they're again not terribly happy with the outcome. But that men do respond to incentives.
Well, the other thing you touched upon in here is that the social benefits, the social programs that may be flipping, because if you have more women achieving in the workforce, they're the ones working, and they're going to be guys at home collecting Social Security
Mm-hmm.
and disability. So
Mm-hmm.
they'll be subsidizing a critical mass of men, unless some law is written up that says men, you can't get these benefits.
Right. And we're not at that point yet, but it is starting to switch where there are a lot of women, especially the younger you go. There's an increasing instance where a young young lady, a Zoomer female, is busting her ass off, working really hard. And then there's the emo Zoomer male equivalent who is collecting a disability check because he has a mental disorder, or so he claims. His parents let him live at home. No one disciplined him because being masculine is bad. And yeah, there's an increasing instance where all these hardworking women are paying the taxes now for men to stay home and literally take drugs and play video games, and sometimes look at girls on the internet, let's just say. And that is happening, and it will continue to increase if you don't check the welfare state and say no, you got to work or something like that. And we continue on giving women preferential treatment in the employment world. I mean, be careful what you wish for, because like imagine what's her name, the Facebook CEO I mentioned her, not Marissa Meyer,
Sandberg.
Sheryl Sandberg. Yes. How many men did she pay for like free EBT and all that? Like that woman paid a lot in taxes. So I know women want to be caring and they want to help out the poor and all that. But the one thing, and I think I mentioned it in the book, okay, let's say you removed women from men's lives, you removed children from men's lives. You even threw in DEI or affirmative action, laid down an unfair hiring environment. There would still be one thing to motivate men. And you know what that would be? Starvation, like homelessness, right? But because women vote for social programs disproportionately, there's now a very healthy welfare state that men can live off of. And certainly if you have the assistance of your parents who will let you live at home, these men won't have to work forever. And so if you pay men not to work, surprise, they won't work. And that does not bode well for the economy and tax revenue and innovation and everything else. So yeah, if you want to pay people not to work, don't be surprised if they don't.
Okay. Now, chapter 6 is powerful because it breaks down women's choices. And I think it's here where you talk about how even socially men are checking out. Okay. And you're seeing that pop up now on, I don't know if you hang out over on TikTok, but you're seeing all these, a lot of
why can't I find a man video type of thing,
or no one's coming to the singles events.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah,
the mixers, no one's coming to the speed dating mixers. No one's approaching me, no one's asking me out. So at some point you also say in here that, well, socially, yeah, they're going to start falling out of the dating market as well, because you don't need them, you don't want them, you're not interested in them, and then in some instances you don't even like them.
Well, it's also a waste of time. I mean, it's some interesting research I did just a couple days ago, which is germane to this. It's not in the book, but if you're aware of like gambling patterns or negative reinforcement, where if you do something and it's punished, like Pavlov's dog, you'll inevitably erode and eliminate the activity. And I actually found research on the internet that it showed that every time if you ask a girl out and she shoots you down, you are 38% less likely to ask out a girl after that. And then if a girl shoots you down again, you're 38% less likely after that. And all it takes is 5 instances in a row of getting shot down, and you're down to single digit chance you're even going to ask out another girl. So by the time you're shot down 4 or 5 times, you're probably not going to ask a girl the 6th or 7th time. And that behavior is eliminated, at least for a time being. You may not ask out a girl for a year or something like that. So you see all this, I would say, propaganda, but all this information given to you. We don't need you. You see the TikTok girls acting all this and that. And then you go out into the real world and you get shot down 4 or 5 times. You're basically saying, okay, what's on the internet is true. But you and I are old enough to know, did you ever get shot down 4 times in a row? In the 90s?
4 times in a row.
I've been shot down 5 times in a night. I mean, like, that's just common, man. Yeah. I mean, that was, but today with the internet, you see these guys. So yes, I think in the backdrop of the internet and social media and especially what teachers and professors have told young men, we don't need you. I'm not taking your last name. When you go out and you ask out a girl, the majority of the time you're going to get shot down. That's just the facts. But when you get shot down in the context of everyone else saying you're not needed, they say, oh yeah, they really don't want me. They really don't like me. And so now, yeah, don't be surprised that no men are showing up to dating events. There was another bit of data where half of men from 18 to 40 hadn't asked out girls in the past year. So the behavior is being eroded away. Especially now that you have all this PR and stuff happening online and in your schools or at work or whatever else have you. So yes, men are not just retreating financially from economic work. They're not even showing up. I mean, a ton of nightclubs have closed down in the cities I used to go nightclub, and they don't have any. They're not even drinking anymore. So I think the men, this isn't BS. It's not pessimism. Men are retreating from women just as much as they are from work in the economy.
Okay. Before we go on to chapter 6 and wrap up, I wrote down 2 things here that I wanted to mention. I'm still hearing the emphasis on we have to do more for our girls. We're not doing enough for our girls. We need to do more for our girls. So somebody's not seeing the bigger picture and connecting all the dots and seeing right now where all of this is going. That's one thing. But also, you also very, very eloquently closed the loop on the immigration piece, and you talked about how immigration and trade deficits. Okay, so you need immigrants to come and do the jobs that the homegrown men here are unmotivated to do, and the standard of living. Toward the end of the book, you kept emphasizing standard of living.
Right.
The only ways we're able to maintain this standard of living under these conditions are with immigrants coming and also with other countries doing our manufacturing.
Yeah, importing. Yeah. You don't need immigrants and you don't need imports. What you can do is say, oh, people would like this domestically? Well, then pay us more. And then you'd have increased wages. But since men have been completely demoralized from working, or you're paying them not to work, or whatever, they're on their Adderall or they're all emo, whatever. Okay, let's just assume the male labor force participation rate is permanently lower. You could toss them $35 an hour. They're not going to go roof. Yes, somewhere in the globe, you're going to have people produce the stuff that you want. And so it shouldn't come as a surprise that to maintain our standard of living, we have to import things from China where they are willing to work. Or if you need something made here, like a house, we import immigrants to do disproportionately carpentry or picking crops or whatever else have you. And so there's things you can do to maintain your standard of living in the short term. We can print off money. We can borrow debt. We can have a trade deficit. We can have immigrants come in and do it. But in the long run, it inevitably, you pay the cost through inflation, lower wages, and other things like that. So, I mean, yes, we can. I mean, we got the world's reserve currency. That's another thing I talk about, where if we didn't have the world's reserve currency, this would have ended like 20 years ago. This would have definitely ended during the housing bubble. But yes, to continue maintaining our consumption standards of living while an increasing percentage of the population doesn't work, we can simply have foreigners do it as long as they keep accepting our green money. But the day might come where they don't want that anymore, or like right now we're getting rid of a lot of illegal aliens, or we say nope, we're not going to have even work visas issued anymore, and now we have to start making things ourselves. Yeah, there would be a drop in the production and a drop in our consumption, but there would also be an increase in wages, and over time, in theory, we make it domestically. But I don't know how you'd motivate young men today. Like, oh, we're sorry we lied to you and said you weren't needed. Hey, can you come work for us now? A lot of them, they're probably past the point. You got 30-year-olds who've known a life of not working or doing the bare minimum, or they're probably even accustomed to it by now. So I don't know how you motivate a labor force that you demotivated and as well as demoralized for pretty much all their entire lives. So I don't know how you're going to get them to come back psychologically.
Okay. Now in chapter 6 is powerful.
Now I got to look up chapter 6. I'm glad I had a copy of this here.
Yeah, this one will definitely be make your girlfriend mad at you, because we talked about the 3 choices that going forward that women are going to have to make. So in other words, a lot of this is in their hands. Be equals to men. I mean, really be equals to men. And you list out the consequences. Maintain the status quo. And then number 3, which would get all of us tarred and feathered, is return to traditional roles in economics. I don't recall which your conclusion for this chapter was. Is this the final chapter? No, chapter 7 is the final chapter.
Yeah, there's really not a conclusion in the 3 options, because it's not my choice to make. This is a choice for women. And basically, to explain to your audience what the 3 choices, the whole point is that women really only have 3 choices when it comes to how they're going to interact with men and what role they want men to play economically. Now, if they wish to maintain standards of living, they're going to have to become equals to men. Not this flabbergabby, jibber jabber, say girl boss power. No, like 50-50. You make up 50% of the welders, 50% of the mechanics, 50% of the surgeons. You work as many hours as men. Right now, women, I think they only work about 92% the hours of men. Where you actually, and I think probably even finish that section where I say you actually become real feminists. You are equals to men. You are actually strong and independent, and you do not need our subsidy in any way. So that's one thing. The only problem, and there's always a cost. Of these 3 options, there is a cost every woman's got to pay. In this one, it's you got to work harder. You have to work as hard as men, right? But you'll be free. You won't have to date men or marry them. You won't have to have sex if you don't want to. You'll maintain your standard of living. You just have to work as hard. You have to go and make the $89,000 of GDP per capita, not the current 5,700 Kenyan standards of living they would make. The second one is maintain the status quo, and that's what we're doing now, where you essentially LARP as men, where you're not doing the plumbing and the oil refinery and all that, but we print off more money. The benefits to that is you don't have to work hard. You keep working at the current rates that you are now in industries that are frankly a lot easier than what men do. Through money printing and a trade deficit, among other things, you are allowed to maintain the standards of living as men continue to work, but dwindle in their amount of work to provide the standards of living in combination with imports and inflation. But down the road, you're going to have inflation. Your purchasing power is going to go down, and your standard of living is going to go down over time. And then the third and final option is returning to traditional roles. There, you don't have to work as hard, right? Men will take care of you. You have as high as standards of living. We could maintain that 89,000. I'd say it'd be significantly more, but that's a different discussion. The only problem is you're going to have to make men happy. And so you're going to have to give up your freedom. And, Thomas Sowell, you like Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell's great quote, I think probably one of the greatest quotes ever, is there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. So ladies, you're going to have to make there's no world where you get to keep being journalism majors, make six figures with the standards of living, and you have your freedom from men. You do not have to make them happy, let's say. There is going to be more work, less freedom, or lower standards of living. So you get to choose which one you're going to endure. But there is no fourth option where it's magical and magic fluffy bunny Federal Reserve comes in and makes you all wealthy. That doesn't happen.
Okay, I'm going to read something here from Alonzo Hall, the All-Star advisor. He says, Cappy, that's unrealistic in my opinion, as men don't particularly want our women working as hard as us. Lots of ladies don't want the equal status of men. And I think this is where things get a little blurry, because in some instances they do, in some instances they don't. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, no, but throw his comment back up so I can read.
Hey, did you mute? Your voice just dropped out.
I'm just trying to understand. He says that's unrealistic in my opinion. What's unrealistic? Because I don't know what he's referring to. The rest of the stuff I understand, as in my opinion, men don't particularly want our women working as hard as us. That's true generally. And a lot of ladies don't want the equal status of men. True, but they sure mouth off that they do. So a lot of if especially we're going to make policy where it is, we're going to have to take them at face value. But I want to know what was unrealistic in Alonzo's opinion. So
all right, Alonzo,
later.
You still there? What was unrealistic?
I'm not disagreeing with him. I just don't. I don't know what's unrealistic.
Okay. Well, while Alonzo answers, let me see if that's him. Okay, he says, I was saying the true 50-50 seems unrealistic.
Yes. Okay, let's go back to his original one so I can have context. Okay, so Cappy at 50-50 is unrealistic, as men don't particularly want women working as hard, and ladies don't want the equal status of men. Yes, because and what Alonzo was pointing out is what everyone's saying versus what people feel deep down inside. For example, when we say we want to be as equal to men, I'm like, no, you don't. Because if you did, we'd see you majoring in STEM the same amount as men do. We'd see you becoming cops or tradesmen or tradeswomen. I don't see that. I think there's a part of women that deep down inside, no matter how much girl bossing and stand up and She-Ra stuff they got going on, they want to be at home and kind of taken care of and secure. The problem is that you can't say one thing and make policy of it in the real world. And then, okay, well, here are the rules we're all going to play by, but wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we're going to throw that all underneath the door. Well, and you especially can't have a welfare state. You can't say we want all this free stuff and we're going to have that. And also now I also want a traditional house where you take care of me. I'm the stay-at-home wife. Like, I got to pay 40% in taxes. I can't afford a stay-at-home wife. We have to work now. So Alonzo's right. If I were to guess, like deep down inside, what lurks in the hearts of men and women, yes, we probably do yearn for a more traditional thing, but that is not what the policies and decisions that have been made. Women have, especially women under 40, they've made their choices in their youth. They have all gone to college. They've racked up tons of student loan debts. They have marginally employable careers. A lot of them have kids now with other guys. And now all of a sudden they want to switch back to traditionalism. It's like, no, we've gone down this path. We've watered these plants this way. We've fertilized these plants this way. We did it wrong. The plants aren't bearing fruit. These are the plants we got. We can't go back and say, well, okay, now I want to go back to tradition. It's like, no, the time to be traditional was like in the 80s and maybe the 90s and make the changes then. Now you're coming up to me with $50,000 in student loan debt for an early childhood education degree, and I can barely get a job. And if I do get a job, I got to pay 40% taxes. Like the option is off the table for traditionalism, at least for this generation, unless you're particularly wealthy. So he's not wrong. If I had to guess, yes, I know as a man, I'm like, yeah, I as I'm older, especially, the best situation, in my opinion, the woman stays home. Not that she's trapped at home. She stays home, takes care of the kids. The guy goes to make the money. We have 10% tax rate. There ain't no welfare state. That would work. And I think that was what would make people happy. It's going to take generations to get back to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you also made the analogy in the book of with the nutmeg tree, and you have to
Yeah, nutmeg trees. Yeah.
you have to. I'm not familiar with nutmeg trees,
Neither
but
was I. We
but
learned about nutmeg trees today, though.
but the point is you have to water those and maintain those over the long term to get the results that you want. And if
Mhm.
you don't, you're going to get an unfavorable yield, which is what's happening with the men in this country.
Right. Let me, for all the women listening, and don't take this out on poor Anwar. Okay, this is me. You got the men you wanted. You got the David Hogues and the Larry or Harry Sisons. You got the effeminate, touchy feely, sensitive guys you want. Here they are. So you can't complain about them. You know, they're here. You're the men you ordered, madam. Here you are. So, but don't complain that they're collecting welfare and they're on antidepressants. This is what you wanted. They're very agreeable though. They'll support you a lot and whatever your adventures are. But yeah, in this crop, they're not coming back. This is the guys you got. So if we wanted different men or different women, you have to plan. I think the nutmeg tree, I think it was like 20 years before they grow a yield. Somebody corrected me and they said, no, it's only like 10, but it's a long time to get nutmegs out of nutmeg trees. This is not a flip the switch scenario and they all become a masculine Chris Pratt or Brad Pitt. You all have David Hogue now as men in your generation. So I don't know what you're going to do with them.
Would these be the Democratic soy boys?
Yeah, the ones like David Hogue is actually the vice chair now, I guess, of the Democrat Party. And then Larry, I don't know, I think it's Harry Sison. He is actually just an influencer that was just bought by the Democrat Party to influence the young kids. But the only reason I mention them is they are the weakest. The one kid looks like he's got blush on his face, and they're just so soft. And I mean, they're big propagandists for the Democrat Party, but they are politically aligned. They're exactly what women said they wanted all these years, and there you go. So getting back to Alonzo's point, yes, deep down inside, I'm sure even Democrat or left or leaning women want a masculine. They want George Clooney, but they aren't going to. We've already made the choices and decisions to now. What was it? I think it was Dick Cheney. No, not Donald Rumsfeld. We don't go to the war with the army we'd like. We go to war with the army we got. Well, you don't go dating with the men you'd like. You go to dating with the men you got. And these are the men you got, and these are the women we got. So, and I don't think either people under 40 are compatible with a traditional lifestyle. Just as it's going to be, everyone's working a little bit on their own now.
Well, going back to the nutmeg tree analogy, I don't think there's a good understanding of what it takes for a man to develop
Correct.
on the female side.
Mm.
I think that the thought process is that some of these qualities just kind of evolve and come out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But some of these things have to be ingrained. Some of these things have to be taught early, repeatedly. And if those things aren't there, then when he gets older, he's gonna have a hard time expressing those things, if at all.
I'll give you another analogy that'll explain it. There is no progress without suffering. There just isn't. Like your pharmacology degree, probably not easy. I imagine you stayed home some nights and not going out party. It took some effort.
Or in the lab,
or in the lab, right. Good finances come with sacrifice. You spend less than you make. I lived in Basin Small in my life.
Yep.
What people are shocked about today with the men and women that they have to date in their community is it's like going to the gym, and instead of letting the weak guy, you're this scrawny little sophomore in high school, right? And you go to the gym, instead of letting the kid do it himself and slowly work up and get buff, everyone thought, well, we're going to help. And so now you go in and you pay people while he's trying to do the bench press. You got two people lifting the bar for him. And you're all shocked that after 5 years of going to the gym religiously with people lifting the weights for him, he's still just as scrawny as he was when he was 15. Men grow based on resistance. It's no different than gaining muscle mass. And it sucks, but if you permit a bit of bragging, the reason I'm such a charming, wonderful person is that I was poor growing up. And I'm not charming or wonderful, but I really respect people's time. I am always on time because I knew if I was late, I would suffer. when my team would suffer, whatever else like that. Knowing to be on time, being brought up poor and hungry, so you value a dollar. Not only do you value the dollar that you made, you value the dollar somebody else made because you know what they had to do to sacrifice their time to get that dollar. This self-awareness and then respect for other people, that comes through pain and suffering. And if you girls want these guys who are physically attractive, they're on time, they're mature, and they're responsible adults, they have to face reality head on without a lot of assistance. And when it's all like, let's be touchy and feely and lift weights for people and give them disability and give them free this and and men just, they're not just poof, they form after they hit a certain age. They need to be formed in fire. You need to take pig iron, you need to put through a super hot fire, and it has to be forged into a man. You've eliminated that process. And you've also eliminated the incentive for any man to go through that process. So yeah, it's kind of sad. You got a lot of limpy nutmeg trees that got no fruit, but there is your field of nutmeg trees, ladies. I hope you enjoy them.
Okay. Everybody, we're towards the end. Please smash that like button. That would help me out a great deal. Before we move to the end, can you, in the last portion of the book, you stress standard of living. I think I know what you're talking about, but from an economics perspective, can you talk about standard of living? Is that having a McDonald's on every corner, going to get Popeyes when you want it, having nice doggy parks, modern sewage? What?
Jennifer Aniston at 28 years old come over to your house. That would be standards of living. But anyway, no, it's based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because standards of living change the higher up you go above it. For the first 2/3, 3/4 of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's all about resources. I need food, clothing, shelter. I need financial stability. I need to not worry about my financial stability. I need to have a emergency fund. I need to have enough money to buy a house so I can buy some food and maybe some nice things. Now I can afford the nice things. Now I have some free time where I can go hang out with my buddies. Now I can find an attractive wife or a husband, and maybe I can get involved in the community. All that requires money. But once you get a little bit higher, if you play your cards right, just the law of diminishing returns kicks in. And the latest book I wrote, it's called Zero World Problems. It focuses on that. At around $86,000 per year in income, that's where you have enough money to kind of take care of everything, and you don't really have to worry about much. After that, it starts to become non-material, non-financial things. Human relationships and personal relationships being the most important one. But there's other things like adventure, philosophical endeavors, reading different philosophy or practice exercise and all. It depends on the individual at that point. But universally, after you got food, clothing, and shelter kind of taken care of, yes, it would be other people. And for men, it especially is having sex with an attractive woman. I'm sorry, that's a tremendous increase in a man's standard of living. And so when you start pursuing these other relationships, that is what really increases your standards of living beyond finances. But since the vast majority of people don't make $89,000 a year, the lion's share of economic work and focus goes on things like personal financial management, majoring in the right thing. What about buying a house? What is a 401k and stuff like that? So, and that's all good. You have to get there, but inevitably you get to the point where you think of more lofty things that have nothing to do with money.
Okay, so in the book, when you talk about maintaining the current standard of living or the standard of living decreasing, you're referring to, to me, it sounds like our lives will be a little less fluffy, a little less.
Oh, like as far as men's role in society goes to maintaining standards of living.
Yeah. So I think you were arguing that the overall standard of living for everybody's gonna on our current trajectory, it's gonna go down.
Yeah. Okay. I remember. Yeah. It's going to go down to like Czech Republic standards, like $19,000 a year. It's a forecast, and all economic forecasts are wrong. But I ran some figures, and if we look at men's labor force participation rate decreasing, the decrease in the number of hours, the decrease in the number of years working, women really not working in fields that matter anyway. If we just keep on going, what we're going to do, yes, you can expect a return to second world standards of living here. That I do forecast, because men are just demotivated at that point in time.
So second world standards, can you just briefly, what would that entail versus what we have now?
It's like Czech Republic. There were what it really was is, it was the first world was the West, the second world was the Soviet Union, or the Soviet bloc, I should say, and the third world was everyone else: Africa, Southeast Asia, all that other stuff. More modernly, it's been like a third. So your top third of countries in terms of wealth, standards of living. So Europe, United States, Canada, trying to think, Australia, Japan, South Korea, those type of things. Second world are countries that are functional and growing, sometimes even growing more than the first world, and they have a lot of potential. So Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Mexico, most of South America. Trying to think of some Middle Eastern countries, stuff like that. And your third world are ones that have bigger issues like war, famine. So South Sudan, Venezuela, where they need foreign aid just to live and survive. So I don't think we're going to go down to the levels of the Republic of Chad for standards of living, which is like $1,000 a year per person. I don't think it's going to get that bad. But I do believe we'll print off a lot of money. There will be inflation. Our labor force participation rate will go down, and we're going to slowly decay into what would be a second world standard of living. So like $90,000 a year, kind of a little bit better than Mexico, a little bit better than Brazil, a little bit less than Poland, that kind of thing.
Okay. All right. We are at the end here. I think I have two more. I'm going to read something from the last chapter. This is literally the end. It says, and this leaves everyone with two important existential questions. One, what is left to live for if we don't have each other?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that's a fundamental question that the book is asking. And then two, what do we do in the meantime? Okay, the first question has been amply answered in my previous essay, The Menu: Life Without the Opposite Sex.
Mm.
Okay, and then it says the second question will be answered in the sequel to this book, An Economy of One.
Mm.
Okay, do you want to say something about, just give us a teaser about where you're going to go?
The Economy of One is basically the individual focusing on him or herself and saying, okay, we've demoralized half the population. The other half of the population is kind of LARPing it at this point in time. What can I do outside of the economy, outside of my economic environment, to increase and maintain my own standards of living? What can I do, regardless of what country I'm in, to have the highest standards of living? And you and I, we're both very pro STEM, and I've talked about things like STEM and minimalism and budgeting and all that. What an Economy of One is going to focus on is you kind of doing as much as you can in your life as possible without the assistance of others. Not only because the reliability of others is going down, but as we keep going down this route, we're going to face 50% tax rates, then 60% tax rates. So all the labor you go and work is immediately going to be having, at least nowadays, I mean, depending on your income level, at least a third of it's going to be going away. Well, instead of you working up all that money to pay for a house, why don't you just go and learn to build a house yourself? Instead of you working up this money, of which 40% is going to be taken away, so you got to work 40% more, why don't you just learn to be a mechanic and get some tools? And it's a retreating, a kind of an Atlas shrugged, where you're pulling out of the official economy. You're not going to college. You're not going to work the 9 to 5 and regular Joe and put in overtime. I mean, you're going to have to have a job of some kind, but I would say half your efforts, and ideally the lion's share of your efforts, would be going into getting off grid, buying some solar powers, installing the solar powers, panels, doing whatever it is that you can do through your own labor to become independent of the system. So that's the economic component. And then the social component is, okay, yeah, you have friends and all that, but making sure you find the right person if you're going to form a family, so that your life is going to be better. Because, and I've said this before, so I'm not really spilling the beans on this, but you know what? The number one thing you can do, at least for a guy, in terms of standards of living, that has nothing to do with economics.
What's that?
Have sex with a good-looking woman. Sex with good-looking people is an incredibly high standard of living, at least for men. I don't know about girls, but I do know for men. And dude, go in other words, go hit the gym, get jacked, find yourself a good-looking gal. It's really hard to do. I know there's other books I've written about how hard it is to find quality people nowadays. But if you can find one, if you're in your little shack and it's got electric power, but you got a great-looking wife and you're having sex all the time, who cares if you're making $25,000 a year? You're growing your own food. You got some kids that maybe love you too, and they hug you and you go, hey, let's go shoot some. I'm going to teach you how to hunt boar, kid. So I think that is going to be maybe not the future, but an option for an increasing number of people. And that's what that book focuses on. Is like, okay, the game that society wants us to play right now is tremendously inefficient. Focus on these things through your own labor that you could provide for yourself, actually tangibly increase your standards of living. And if you could get the right people in your life, you really do have just as high, if not higher, of a standard of living, whether or not the U.S. is making $89,000 a year or $19,000 a year. It would be moot.
Okay. To this last question, it's a bit of a thought type of thing. I don't know if you saw Anthony Mackie's recent position, and it's cool that someone in Hollywood is actually coming out and saying that masculinity has been destroyed over the last 2 to 3 decades. But that's just one person in Hollywood. The rest of them are political leaders, the mainstream media. They seem content to drive the train off the cliff. I mean, at the and this is not saying all the Republicans are saints. I'm not saying that, but at the Democratic National Convention, Madam Vice President Harris, she was pounding the drum on reproductive rights, and we're not going back. We're not going back. We're not going back. Well, going back to what? Because where we are right now is pretty dire. Just the apparatus, the machine, they seem content to drive this thing off the cliff. And I mean, are you? No one seems to be putting the dots together for these things that we're talking about. Are you seeing the same thing? Is leadership asleep at the wheel?
Well, yeah, no, I see generally the left. They've been doing that for years, though. And the right, I think you see them kind of waking up. I also think you see some regular, everyday working Democrats waking up, where it's like, what do you mean? Like, I'll give you something that every man, Republican or Democrat, is going to agree on. No, Lizzo's not attractive. She is not attractive. I don't care how many times you keep trying to tell me that fat women are attractive. No, they are not. They're not. And they're starting to run into a hard biological programming. They're starting to run into nature where men are like, no, I'm not. Why is that person a model? And I also think it's just people are getting sick and tired of I think we reach peak girl boss between the movies and the culture and Jen Girl Boss in a Mini, Jen Girl Boss in a Mini. I think they've reached their fill, and especially men are not going to be polite about it anymore. So the Democrats or whatever politically motivated group, feminist Democrats, whatever, they can keep going down that route. But I think the rest of the community, because it's kind of apolitical, it's sexual. It's like, no, I want to have a wife and kids. No, I want my wife to be pretty. I think women are also like, they'll never tell you, again, what lurks deep in the hearts of women, we'll never know. But I think women are looking at the Harry Sisons and the Democrat soy boys and all that. They're starting to look at what kind of men they're producing, and that is not making them happy. I also think increasingly so, young women are probably getting tired of the girl boss stuff, especially with student loan debts and not good finances. So maybe not this generation, but the the strong, independent woman, girl boss, and we don't need no man, that has reached its peak. Like Marvel movies, it reached its peak about 5 to 10 years ago, and people just aren't having it anymore. And I also think the other side has been emboldened because, frankly, they got nothing to lose, where they could speak bluntly about this on the internet or Twitter or YouTube or writing books like that. And that's the other thing is these guys have nothing to lose. You can't take anything away from them. You know, you're keeping them alive with welfare and they're living at home. There's no shame in living at home anymore. So they can speak bluntly about it. And I think they kind of are. What it's really going to boil down to is future generations of young women as to whether or not they're going to want to have relationships with men. And that's going to be really hard for young women to ignore the message, the propaganda they're going to get that comes with going K through 12, not to mention the media. But I think that might happen with the internet where girls are going to say, you know what? I do want a guy. You know what? I do want to be a stay-at-home mom, or maybe I do want to become an accountant, but no, my man and my children would come first. I don't know truthfully where women are on that. But it's not my obligation. They will make that choice. But we'll find out if they do. But until that time, yeah, men are going to react to the choices women are making and have made. And I think they're going to continue to economically hibernate, as it were, until we see that women want us to invest in them again. So the Democrats can keep being. You're old enough to. Do you remember the satanic panic of the 80s?
I was a young guy then. I don't remember. My dad was a pastor, so we saw it front and center, and it was premarital sex and teenagers and the rock and roll and the Motley Crue and the devil's music and all that. It's like the Democrats are that now, like, oh my God, you want women with boobs and you want to have sex with them, and you probably think that you're going to have them wear heels. And it's like, yeah, so I think they're even getting long in the tooth from a PR perspective, where they're starting to come off as the pearl clutching school marm, afraid that some man who's a plumber might marry my daughter. Oh no, and she won't hyphenate her name. So I think the young kids are probably starting to wake up to that a little bit. But like I said, we'll see. We'll see. Okay. All right. Do you have any other comments or stories or jokes or anything, Aaron?
Ladies, men would like to have you back, but I won't lie to you. Yes, men are primarily interested in one thing. That would be sex. But lust is the foundation for all healthy romantic relationships. If you don't have that, you are not going to have love. Men inevitably do want to get married. I think most men do want to have kids. We would probably, as Alonzo said, Alonzo's probably right that most men would like to just kind of take care of you and have you stay home. But that's going to be a choice for you girls to make going down the road. We could keep doing this. We don't need no man, and we're a girl boss, and you're oppressing us. I would ask your elder sisters, be it millennials, Gen Z, or baby boomer women, how happy they are. And maybe instead of fighting against men, we get together and have a lot of fun. That would be my optimistic hope. I'm out of it. It's more for the younger generation. But I think if you can do that selflessness and realize men have certain requirements and preferences, and you're never going to change that, you're just not. And if you say, okay, well, if you could accept that, maybe that could be fun. Maybe we could get back together and have a great economy again. And maybe you're going to have a better life than previous generations. But that is not men's choice. And that's going to be up to women as to whether or not we will reciprocally invest in each other going forward.
Okay, everybody. Aaron Carey, Captain Capitalism.
Thanks for having me.
This is the book we just discussed, A World Without Men, an analysis of an all-female economy. Now, you just dropped another one after this, right?
Not right, a year later. Published it a month ago. It's called Zero World Problems. It focuses on post-first world problems, kind of what I was talking about before, that non-economic stuff you could do to increase your standards of living.
Okay.
All right. The economy of one won't be coming until later. That's going to be down the road.
Okay. Okay. Well, Aaron, thank you for coming back. I appreciate this. You add tremendous value, and I appreciate the work you've done connecting the dots in this book here.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so Aaron, this is where I advertise my 1,000 page book.
Yeah, I got that. I got that. Yeah.
So,
hey, let me
guys,
tell your audience. I gotta tell your audience. Like Anwar email. Hey, I got this book. Haven't talked to him. Oh, yeah, what's going on, man? Da, da, da. I got this book. Can I send it to you? I'm like, yeah. This thing is this thick. It's.
Well, Aaron, I was thinking one thing. So a writer at the Writers Center here in DC said that we all have a natural length.
Mm-hmm.
We all, and I, Stephen King, when he would write his books, he'd sit down and throw down 700 words per day. Well, I'm saying this to say, I realize it's long. You're under no pressure to, read through that right now. I know you're a busy guy. As a newbie, I'm looking for, recommendations and endorsements. Yeah. So.
Hey, the book is as long as he's right. The book is as long as it needs to be. I'm not slamming on you at all for it being an 800-page tome. I just like, oh, Dr. Honor, he's got something coming out. Okay, I'll check it out. I'm like, crap, it's a textbook, man. Okay, I got go. Now, do you have it in audiobook?
Not yet.
Okay. All right.
But Enjoy the Decline is referenced in the prologue.
Is. Oh, okay.
It is.
All right.
Because it's more than a basketball book. It's about learning the world and finding your way in the world as a young man.
Mm.
So I do give some commentary on where we are in the beginning, and it's my first book, so I have to say something about who I am and why I wrote it. So, but your book was cited in it.
Well, I appreciate it. I will get to. It's back in Vegas. When I get back there, I'm going to start making my way through it, and I'll get through it by about 2028, and then do a review. If I'm alive, I'll do a review on it.
Well, I mean, you're on vacation what do you call it? A day at the office when you're out?
I'm out hiking. Yeah.
Well, you're hiking every day.
So just so you know, I do work. In case you all were, I don't just run around like some trophy wife hiking mountains all the time. Usually, I do videos in the morning. I got to answer emails. I got to do accounting. Then I get out in the afternoon. I take a picture, but then I'm back. It's even more like right after this, I got to go do more videos. So I mean, I do some work. But
okay.
I will have the free time to read it.
All right. Well, Aaron, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'll see you later.
All right. Bye-bye. Toodles. That's how Aaron closes out. He says toodles. All right, everyone. Yeah, this is where I do a brief advertisement. Salchi, thank you for putting this link here. That is the Amazon link, I believe. My book, The Engineers of Western New York Basketball Story. Part 1, Innocent Basketball Dreams, is available on Amazon in the ebook, hardcover, and paperback editions. But I am also selling signed copies right here out of my condo unit at a discounted price. If you want one, the hardcover or the paperback, I'm taking $10 off of the Amazon price. So the hardcover is $25 through me. That's signed. And the paperback is $22. So I'm taking $5 off of that. And for those of you watching this, if you want one, and you want to render a payment, use one of these methods here. Again, that's $25 for the hardcover and $22 for the paperback. But make sure you send me your mailing address so I'll know where to send the book. I'm trying to find that slide right now. I hope you all enjoyed this discussion. I know for some people, so I'm on X, that email address there in the second row. That's a good place to send, a good place to email me. And I am on Instagram as well. And I do some playing around on TikTok as well. So if you want one, that's how you can get one, through Amazon or through me. So with that, everyone, I have to go. I can't go hiking most days. So I live in DC and I have to go into the office tomorrow. So if you're watching on the playback, please like, share, and subscribe, and leave any comments or reactions to our discussion in the comments section below. So with that, everyone, I am going to wrap up. Let me just check this. I don't think I got any donations, but I appreciate the eyeballs. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to wrap this up, everybody. As always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. And one of the cool things about talking with Aaron is that it forces me to go back and rehash and recall my civics classes and my economics classes. And when you're a young person learning about these things in middle school and high school, GDP, the economy, uh, uh, all these different aspects of civics and social studies, you don't see why they matter at that age. But as you get older and you become an adult, a voting adult, a working adult, and you have to pay bills and you have to, well, you don't have to date, but when you're out there as an adult, then you start to realize why all of these things are important. So everyone, have a good night, and I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.